I was going to say, how close did you actually get, do you think, to becoming a school shooter? Like, was it like a couple of days?
The night that I watched Passion of the Christ, that following day I was planning on buying the guns, and the next week I was going to actually carry out the school shooting itself.
Wow. Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, don't hesitate to reach out. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Today, we're speaking to a man who reached out with the email subject line, "I was almost a school shooter." So we are going to talk to him about his journey and how he got to that point in his life. So we've got the guest on the line, and thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, it's great to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Very jarring subject line. I was almost a school shooter. I think we're relieved that the word almost is in there, but can you just walk us through your, I guess, school experience, just kind of paint the picture of the age that you were and sort of the events leading up to this moment where you almost decided to be a school shooter?
Yeah, absolutely. My mission right now is ending the school shooting crisis around the world. And it came from personal experience. You know how in Alcoholics Anonymous, the first rule is admitting you have a problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
So the reason why school shootings have not been resolved is because we as a nation have been unwilling to address the root cause. And that is toxic school culture. There's many factors involved because it's a multi-layered, multi-dimensional type of situation. Fatherless homes, sexual abuse, drugs and alcohol. You go down the list of things that are factors, SSRIs and antipsychotic drugs. These are all factors, but the common denominator, and this was proven in 2004, the United States Secret Service did an independent investigation on school shootings, and they've concluded that violent bullying and humiliation was the common denominator in almost all school shooters.
Okay.
So I'll go back to where it kind of started with me. I'm a very tall man, like very, very tall, and I just always stood out. And it all started at my elementary school locally here. And I remember I was in kindergarten, and my 5-year-old classmates, my 5-year-old peers, would call me gay, faggot, and retard. I don't know why they did that. I was very confused, but that's just the words that they decided to throw against me. I was always a very quiet, introverted, shy kid, and I just wanted friends just like everybody else. But for some reason, my peers decided to call me these names. And for years, I just kind of just sucked it in. Until one day in 3rd grade, I kind of had a mental breakdown. It was a particularly really bad day at school where the kids were just calling me these slurs. And I broke down at my parents' house. And I said, "Mom and Dad, I just don't know why these kids are calling me this." And of course, my parents, their parental instincts kicked in. And they were like, "We're going to go to the principal's office right now, and we're going to resolve this right now." So we go to the car, drive to school, and we go to the principal's office. We sit down, explain the situation. The principal kind of like nodded her head, listening intently. And then after it was all said and done, she politely asked my parents to leave the room. Now, my mom raised her eyebrow, and I guess it was her motherly instinct kicking in, but they very reluctantly left the room. And once they left the room and closed the door, this lady looks at me in my face. Mind you, I'm 9 years old at the time.
Okay.
She looks at me right in my face and says, "It's okay to be a faggot."
Wow. This was the principal of the school?
This is the principal of the school. She didn't ask me any questions, and she just made that comment. That moment, my soul died. She didn't know it because I kept it in. And that night, I attempted to kill myself.
Was that just the feeling of not having anyone on your side?
Yes. It was feeling completely worthless, completely like nobody cared about me. Like nobody gave a damn, and it was just helplessness. It's like all these kids were calling me this name and I didn't know why. And then the principal, the leader of the school, confirmed that I was this thing that all these kids were calling me. So I was like, I don't want to live anymore. And that's when I attempted that evening.
Did that become public knowledge that you had done something like that?
No, I did this quietly while I did this quietly while my parents were sleeping in the middle of the night, and the rope broke, and I just sat there and I cried for about another 30 minutes in silence, and I put the rope away, and I just went back to sleep. And the following morning I was like, you know what? I don't want to talk to any humans. I don't want to talk to any people. I'm just going to be by myself. I'm going to sit by myself in the cafeteria like I always have been. And I'm just going to accept it, because I would rather be alone than deal with people destroying my soul. 9 years old is when all of this happened. So fast forward to middle school. My parents transfer me to a private Christian school. They said, Mark, we're going to transfer you to a Christian school because it's safer. They love Jesus, godly people, and it's going to be a better environment. Little did I know that it was worse. I transferred to 6th grade into a Christian school, and it was worse.
In terms of like the student population, the teachers, just everything.
The what?
Like in terms of the students that were there and bullying, or just like the teachers, or everything was just worse?
The students were worse. The teachers, they were kind of oblivious, no different than the teachers in public school. And and the kids, man, you talk about the most hypocritical people I've met in my life, because they were proclaiming Jesus. Yes, I'm saved. I believe in Jesus as my savior. And they would act like angels in front of the teachers, and they would act like demons the second they turned their backs. And I remember I transferred to a different Christian school for 7th grade, and it was the same situation, the same exact situation. And I also remember very clearly this one moment. There was this one particular kid who was giving me absolute hell, and he loved using that word faggot. I don't know why faggot was the word that was used in the 90s and early 2000s hardcore. But I remember
it definitely had its moment.
The teacher left the room to go do something. I forgot what it was. And this kid just started goading me hardcore. And mind you, at the time, none of these kids knew this, but at the time I was taking martial arts classes since I was like 7 years old. I knew how to fight.
And you said you're really tall too, right?
Yeah, I'm really, really tall, and I'm very physical. I'm just a very kind, gentle human being, and violence is like the last resort. And so that's why I always just kept taking these words. And it was weird, because I remember in my martial arts classes, the instructor was like, you do not fight unless your life is on the line, right? Unless they strike you first, unless they hit you first. And none of these kids ever went to strike me, but they knew how to kill my soul with their words. And that's what I had no defense against. I was never taught the power of the words and neurolinguistic programming and how words reprogram your subconscious mind. That's something that we are not educated on when we were in school. So I remember him goading me on, and I was just sucking it in. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to walk away. I'm just going to walk away. And I turn around to walk away, and he said, yeah, walk away, you fucking faggot. And I froze. And I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around and I just donkey kicked him. I just kicked him in his gut, and he went straight to the ground and started crying like a little. He just started crying very, very, very hard. And of course, we go to the principal's office, and they didn't want to hear what he was calling me. They said, like, oh, you hit him. You acted out in violence. Here's 45 demerits. That's what they used. Demerits is what the private school used for punishment. And basically, I was like 1 or 2 demerits away from being expelled just from that one act of trying to defend myself. So my parents pulled me out of the school and transferred to a different Christian school for 7th and 8th grade. And the same garbage, same hateful. The same hate was being spilled out.
Do you think they were just targeting you, or because you were tall, or it was just like the culture? Yes. Like a lot of kids were getting bullied as well.
Well, there were other kids being bullied, but I happened to be the biggest target that there is.
Right.
And for the longest time, I never understood, why do humans do this? And this drove me to studying psychology much later. Why do humans behave this way? And I did this in preparation for the TED Talk that I did 2 years ago when the theme was uncomfortable solutions. And on a scientific level, for why humans treat each other like this, is that most people are slaves to their amygdala. The amygdala is the fight or flight portion of the brain for survival, right? And we needed that. When you're in the woods and there's a bear, amygdala goes, hey, you better run from that bear, otherwise the bear's going to eat you, you're going to die, right?
Okay.
That's a healthy fight or flight.
Right.
But now we're no longer in the woods anymore. Now we are in classrooms, but that amygdala is still there. So instead of the bear, the children are unconsciously segregating each other into that kid's too tall, too short, too skinny, too fat, too white, too black, Jew, Christian, Muslim. The children are segregating each other based off of this fear primitive portion of their brain. And that's what drives the behavior of trying to dominate and hurt one another since grade school, since elementary school. And that's the primary driver of why they do this. So yeah, fast forward to high school, right? My parents transferred me to I actually asked them, Mom and Dad, please just transfer me to a public school, because at least they don't hide their hatred. The Christians, they use Jesus and Satan as a scapegoat for their actions. I found it's very different. It's one thing to embody. It's one thing to believe in Christ. It's a different thing to embody Christ. And I found out that the very hard way at those 3 Christian schools, a bunch of hypocrites. So I asked them to transfer me to public school, and the bullying and abuse went down a lot because I joined the varsity basketball team. And that's when I really got to understand the power of cliques and social hierarchy and power dynamics, which exist in schools. So, but although I was on the varsity basketball team, I was still kind of like the social outcast. I was the outcast athlete. I was in a very weird space in that time frame. And so even though the harassment and abuse went down a lot, there was still like a handful of kids that were still giving me absolute hell because they were taking advantage of my kindness, right? And so fast forward like a couple of years, I transitioned from depression and sadness from elementary and middle school to hatred and animosity. There was like some flip that switched in my brain that made that transition. And that's when I started thinking of the suicidal thoughts started coming back again. But then it was like, you know what? You people that are making my life hell, I'm going to kill you before I kill myself. You're going to taste a fraction of the pain and the suffering that I felt before I take myself out. And those thoughts really started permeating my brain. And what stopped me from actually following through with that was, you remember Passion of the Christ that came out in 2004?
Yeah. Yep.
So I remember just going through, just having these thoughts and starting planning it out. And like, I already found somebody who can get the guns. Like I had all of it planned out. And I remember for some reason being driven to watch the film. And I go to watch the movie, and there was a scene of Jesus getting the lashings on his back. And aside from the brutality that we see of the beginning stages of the crucifixion, one particular portion that really stuck out to me was when he was getting nailed to the cross.
Okay.
And he just said out loud, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And like that hit me like a wall of bricks that I couldn't. It just slammed into me, and I was like, I just flashed back to the kids that were hurting me, and I was like, they're hurting me because of their own ignorance of their own selves. A lot of them are very hurt themselves, and it's like the whole hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's why they're wanting to hurt me, is because they are projecting their pain onto me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to forgive them for the hatred that they're spilling onto me. And I'm just going to, that was the process I had going forward. And I was tested the very next day at school. There was a situation where the kids were just coming at me again. And I just quietly said to myself, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
That's a
and
very,
I was able to release. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very profound realization to have in high school, which is, I mean, thankfully, because the fact that you kind of got to the point of planning this out, understanding how to acquire a firearm. But why do you think that impacted you so much in the moment? Just hearing those lines, like having so much hatred and now taking step towards planning to kill these people. Why do you think you were so impacted by that line and able to kind of de-escalate all of this in your own mind?
Because I had a lot of discernment from a very early age and high awareness. And I realized that a lot of people are operating off of their instincts, and they don't have that awareness. They don't have that primary, they don't think about their own thoughts. They just act off of instinct. And so I came to just understand that the majority of these kids are acting off of their own instinct through survival and preservation of themselves. And that comes through attacking others. And they are literally unaware that they are doing that. The prefrontal cortex is not developed until later in life. And that's where higher intuition, will, those higher cognitive faculties lie in. And so I realized they were just ignorant of their own decisions. And so once I go ahead.
I was going to say, how close did you actually get, do you think, to becoming a school shooter? Like, was it like a couple days?
So the night that I watched Passion of the Christ, that following day I was planning on buying the guns, and the next week I was going to actually carry out the school shooting itself.
Wow. And you had a plan for all of that?
I had a plan. I wasn't going to kill just random people. I had specific individuals who were making my life a living hell that I was going to execute them before killing myself.
Before we get back to this interview, we do have a couple of sponsors to tell you about. If you think that you can't make a professionally designed website, you are wrong. With Squarespace, you can create personalized websites to help you or your business succeed online. I have friends who have used Squarespace for everything from websites to display their artwork, their photography, to run their entire online businesses where they're actually taking orders and making money. Of course, we use it here in the studio for other people's lives. This is how we get all our amazing guests. We've used Squarespace for the past, how long have we been doing this podcast now? 6 years, 7 years, something, probably more. Squarespace offers amazing design templates to choose from, and you can use their drag and drop system as well to just 100% customize your website. You can upload videos, you can upload products, you can get paid, you can run marketing and email campaigns, you can set appointments, whatever you need, you can make your Squarespace website tailored to your business. I can't recommend Squarespace enough. It makes you feel so much more professional because of how easy they've made it to make a website. So if you are looking to scale your business, or if you're just starting out, check out squarespace.com/OPL for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code OPL to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. So that's squarespace.com/OPL. You're going to get a free trial. You can use all those features that I just talked about. You can actually make a website for yourself. And then when you are ready to launch that website, use the offer code OPL. You will save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. I want to talk about stress for a second, specifically financial stress. 88% of Americans are feeling some form of financial stress at the start of 2026. And worrying about money can take a serious toll on a person's mental health. It can affect their relationships, their marriages. It could stop you from sleeping. It can cause depression. Financial stress, so much can stem from that weight of constantly thinking and worrying about money. And this month, we want to normalize the emotional weight of financial stress and remind people that struggling with money does not mean that you've failed. Sometimes it's just about accessing the right kind of support. I believe therapy can be a perfect place to unpack your relationship with money and be able to talk about the financial stress that you are feeling in your life. And it's not about getting financial advice, but therapy is about learning to cope with and manage the stress, and specifically stress that you feel about money. And BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform and has served over 6 million people globally. They help identify your needs and will match you with a therapist. And if for any reason you're not happy, you can switch therapists. So you can go through the process to find someone that you're really comfortable with. However, BetterHelp is very confident that based on the questionnaire that you fill out, they will be able to match that right the first time. So when life feels overwhelming, therapy can help, and you can sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/OPL. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OPL. So sign up, get 10% off, betterhelp.com/OPL. Now back to the show.
And I guess, like, you know, as you make the decision to not do that, you know, I'm assuming that these individuals continued with the bullying. How are you able to deal with that moving forward, even though you're kind of at the point where it seems like a breaking point in your life?
Yeah. So just ignoring them. That was like when you give them energy, you feed that cycle of hatred. So I found out by just completely ignoring them, ignoring their existence, ignoring their words completely, was my solution. And then over time, once they realized that them goading me with their words was not affecting me, then they stopped.
Right.
Did you sort of plan on dedicating your life to this from that point, or is it just something that?
No.
So how?
Well, I remember, like, I remember around the time that was shortly after. It was a couple of years after the Columbine shooting happened. And I knew something didn't seem right. That the official story that we were given, that, you know, that they were demonic, they like video games, listen to Marilyn Manson, like something just felt off about that official story that we were given. But I kind of just ignored it. I put it away to the side because I was dealing with my own life, right? And then, like, I went to college. I studied business and finance. I got into the business and finance world, but then shooting after shooting after shooting started to happen, and I was just seeing it happen just all over the United States, and then shootings starting to happen all over the world, right? And I was like, why isn't anyone doing anything about this? Like that thought just started crossing over my mind year after year. Just more school shootings, and it's the thoughts and prayers, and it's like, we're sorry, guys, and then silence, and then some talk about gun control, and then more silence, and then another school shooting
And then
happens,
on to the next, yeah. To the
and
point that majority aren't even getting recognition in the news because it happens so often.
Exactly. That's how desensitized we have become as a society, you know? So there was I kind of reached a point in my life about 3 or 4 years ago where, yeah, shortly after the pandemic happened, school shootings and suicides completely skyrocketed, like tripled and quadrupled from the rates that they were before. And the same story. Sorry, guys, thoughts and prayers. You know, we're really sorry about this. You know, our best wishes to you, and that's it. And I remember there was this documentary that came out. Have either of you heard of this documentary that came out like 3 months ago called Thoughts and Prayers on HBO?
No, I haven't seen that.
So it made me personally want to vomit, because the tagline is the new normal, right? And it basically talks about how the school shooting industry has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. We are spending a fortune turning our schools into fortresses, whether it's bulletproof backpacks, metal detectors, drones, robots, security cameras. We're spending all this money containing the bomb after it goes off, when the solution is preventing that bomb from going off to begin with. And that's the conversation that nobody is having.
So tell us more about that, like where this journey led you. You said that you then chose to study psychology. And I guess what we're gathering is you see the root cause of school shootings as these toxic environments, as you say, which I guess bullying is the simple way to put it. Like what happened to you is what you believe is happening to most people who end up being school shooters.
Yes. And there was one particular book that really set off my journey on what I'm doing now, which is, you know, I did the TED Talk, and then I produced a short film on school shootings last year, and now I'm producing a documentary as well. All of that came from one book called No Easy Answers: The Truth Behind Death at Columbine. Have either of you heard about that book?
No, I've read the Columbine book, but I have not heard of this book.
Are you talking about the one by Dave Cullen?
Yes.
Yeah. So that book, I read that book too, and that book backs the official narrative that was given to us. If you want the actual inside story of what actually happened, then read this book. The author, his name is Brooks Brown, and I recommend everyone read this.
Mhm.
It was released in 2002 as a memoir, and it was written by Brooks Brown, and Brooks was the childhood friend of Dylan Klebold.
Okay.
And in that book, because Brooks also went to Columbine High School, and he basically whistleblows the extremely abusive environment that was tolerated at that particular high school. The reason why those two boys did what they did, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, is because they were brutally and sadistically abused by the varsity athletes for years, with the faculty and staff having full knowledge about the abuse. And they chose not to do anything because football state championship was more important than student safety.
Interesting.
And that's the real reason. And go ahead.
I was going to say, so what do you, when you're talking about these things and like we need to address these problems, what in your opinion is some solutions to cleaning up this toxic school environment?
That's a phenomenal question, and that's the foundation and basis of what I'm trying to do. So there's a two-pronged approach that I see. Number one is emotional intelligence education for every single school in the United States. We teach them math, science, literature, history, but we don't teach them what it means to be human and how our emotions control us as human beings. Like, how many people do you know in your life that have made a life-altering decision based off of an emotional reaction?
Way too many.
Exactly, because we are not taught emotional intelligence. And, that's what leads to two guys on the road. One cuts the other off in the road. They flick each other off, pull over the side of the road, scream, yell, and then one pulls a gun and they kill each other. That's the outcome of a dysregulated society that has no emotional intelligence. Another situation that happened here locally at a school here in Florida was there was two boys, I think it was Oak Ridge High School. There was two boys who bumped into each other into the hallway. And instead of saying, yo, my bad, I'm sorry. No, they got in each other's faces and they go like, we're going to take this outside. They go outside and one of the boys pulls a gun out and kills the other boy.
Jeez.
All over bumping shoulders in the hallway. Another situation, this happened 2 weeks ago. A 12-year-old girl was arrested in Volusia County because she had a written manifesto out so that she was going to carry out a school shooting on a scale worse than Columbine. That same weekend, an 8-year-old boy at an elementary school told his classmates in the playground, I'm going to bring a gun to school because this one kid is bullying me and I'm going to kill him. That same weekend, an 11-year-old girl brought a gun on a school bus. She put the gun to her head and she pulled the trigger. The gun malfunctioned. So this youth violence, youth suicide, and school shootings is a disease plaguing the entire world. And we have just been ignorant on why we are doing this and why this is happening. And a big part of it is the gaslighting that adults and institutions have been doing this for decades. What happens, legally speaking, I'm going to ask the two of you, legally speaking, what happens when an adult abuses a child?
I'm assuming they are prosecuted.
Yes. A prosecuted adult goes to jail, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you this. What happens when a child abuses a child?
I'm not sure.
In terms of just bullying or like physical altercations?
Yeah, just child abusing a child. We've concluded adult abusing a child, adult goes to jail. But if a child abuses a child, what happens?
I
think depending on the degree of it,
Well,
some
sure.
people, there's like a juvenile detention maybe.
Or in this case, I guess you're referring to
but
like the authorities in this case might be teachers or principal or like administration at a school that is, I guess essentially nothing is the answer.
That there it is, nothing. And that is the answer, because, and we are gaslit by the words, oh, kids will be kids.
Mm-hmm.
Boys will be boys. Toughen up. Or here's my favorite. It's character building. So we have been gaslighting our children for decades, tolerating abuse with this bullshit word we call bullying. Bullying is a very sanitized word used to gaslight the children that are actually abusing each other. And that's part of the reason why this is so systemic and why it's happening on a mass scale. So going back again to the solution, right? The emotional intelligence education is the first part. And the second part is that I created a program that I offer to high schools. And I hope this goes statewide and nationwide and eventually globally. It's called the HERO Protocol. It is a protocol to use the influence of the students that have the most influence in the actual school. Since we know that in high school popularity is currency, the students segregate each other based off of that popularity, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the top of the social hierarchy are the jocks, the athletes, the cheerleaders. If you're wealthy, if you are attractive, you are on top of this social ladder. And then you have all the students in between that try to fit in. And then the bottom of the barrel, the outcasts, the losers, the rejects, the nobodies. These are the students that are treated like trash by those at the top. Not all of them. There are some people on the top that are genuinely good human beings, but a lot of them abuse that power and they hurt each other to those that are on a lower social status. So to fix that, and since we know that toxic school culture is the common denominator, how do we shift it from toxic school culture to positive school culture? By shifting the influence of the students that have the greatest influence of the school, which are the varsity athletes. So my program is made specifically. Go ahead.
How do you do that?
Great question. So it's a contract essentially for the coaches of the school, the varsity coaches. So when the students, when they do the tryouts for the team, football, basketball, volleyball, baseball, and all of them, right? So when they make the team, make the cut, and the coaches give the speech, oh, do your best, work your butt off, et cetera, et cetera. To be a part of this team, you must sign this character contract. HERO is an acronym for humility, empathy, respect, and ownership for your actions. So when you leave this field, you embody these principles off the field, in the classroom, in the hallways, in the cafeteria. You become a role model for the rest of the students in the school. And if you see anyone hurting each other, you step in and you stop it. That right there is the foundation for shifting the entire school culture, because these athletes have such a tremendous influence, not just on that school culture, but if some of these athletes make it to the collegiate level, so many more students are going to be looking up to them. If the 1% of the 1% make it to professional level, literally millions and millions of kids across the entire world are going to be looking up to them. So it's almost like their job to be an actual role model and to be a leader and to start showing it in the high school environment. So that's my two-pronged solution, is the emotional intelligence and the HERO contract for the athletes. And if the athletes break the contract, infraction number 1 is a 3-game suspension. And if you break it a second time, you are kicked off the team. And that's going to take balls from the coaches, because in our society, winning is everything. We got to win, victory and winning, right? I'm trying to transition from winning being the most important thing to humanity and how we treat each other as being the most important thing.
Before we finish this interview, we do have one more sponsor to tell you about. Spring is finally here, and this is a time where I always start digging through my closet, looking at my wardrobe, and just rethinking everything. I usually find myself with too many items that I don't actually wear, or items that just aren't the quality that I actually want. And that's why I just keep coming back to Quince for my essential pieces that I wear most of the time. Quince has great quality and prices that actually make sense. I'm wearing Quince right now. Shirt is Quince. I've got their linen pants. I love these things. I live in them. They're so comfortable. I've got a couple shorts here that I picked up. We got the linen shorts. We got the green shorts, and a lot more will be ordered, but super comfortable, amazing fabric, breathable, easy to wear, and it's quality that actually lasts. The best part about Quince is that their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How do they do that, you ask? Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middleman. So you are paying for quality, not the fancy brand markup. And everything is designed to last and make getting dressed easier. So refresh your wardrobe with Quince and go to quince.com/OPL for free shipping and 365-day returns. That's how confident they are. It's also now available in Canada. So go to quince.com/OPL. That's QUINCE.com/OPL for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/OPL. Trust me. Now back to the episode.
So. Yeah, that's a great sentiment. Do you believe that could be implemented on a school level? And I guess
yes,
that probably is. And has it been anywhere?
Yes, I actually had this conversation with the coach several months ago regarding this, and he was like, "That's brilliant. I'm going to apply this. I'm going to apply this right away." And literally 2 weeks ago, we had a follow-up conversation on this, and he told me since doing this, the students in the school that were the outcasts, that were quiet, that were missing classes, that were by themselves, those students started showing up every single day with a smile on their face for the first time ever. They would always come in depressed, and those particular students would be happy. And then the teachers themselves just saw the culture itself slowly start to shift, and they saw a camaraderie that was there that was never there before, and also those students that were struggling with their grades went up as well. So everyone wins.
And is this something that you actively, like, you're going from school to school trying to implement this program?
Yes, I'm actively doing that here in Florida, and I'm wanting to get to the Secretary of Education to present this to our leaders in education to actually change national law to make this law across all schools. And I promise you, I put my soul on the line. If this was actually implemented to scale, school shootings and suicide would drastically go down.
Yeah, I mean, it's very admirable how much you're dedicating to that, and it would be very interesting to see more schools implement that, and whatever tangible results they can kind of get from that. I guess in general, like, is there a belief in this country that bullying is the root cause of school shooting? Or
no, not at all. And that's why, going back to the whole Alcoholics Anonymous analogy that I gave earlier, is that we dance around the whole bullying situation. No, they'd like to point the finger. Oh, they were crazy. They were psychopaths. Mm-hmm. The mental illness. So it's passively dismissed as these individual things, not realizing that cause and effect is one of the golden laws of the universe, right? And the school shooting that we see, that effect comes from a cause, and the cause is how we treat each other as human beings. And that is something that we as a nation have been avoiding for many, many decades. It's an ugly mirror that we have just been dodging for a very, very long time. And unless we confront that, unless we look at ourselves as a society and change how we treat each other, school shootings will continue forever.
Yeah, and there's the hopelessness around that for sure. And it's very interesting to hear this, and I'm curious what listeners will think about the approach or other approaches people out there might be taking. But yeah, like you said, it's thoughts and prayers and move on. And are there any actionable solutions other than things we've heard, like arming teachers and metal detectors? But clearly, school shootings aren't going down. Gun rights, obviously, people will talk about. But yeah, it's interesting to hear this, try to create this systemic approach that could be started in the school and kind of use the student body to just change the culture. Very interesting.
That's exactly what it is. Put the power back to the students. Give the power back to them and give them the knowledge that they have of making the right decision, and trust them and give the guidance to give that right decision. And we will shift the culture crisis going on Both Republicans and Democrats have been barking up the wrong tree. We can talk about guns till we're blue in the face. This will not go away until we change how we treat each other as human beings. It's that simple.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. And I think it's, to echo what Greg is saying, I think it's super admirable to see this as obviously like a huge issue in our country. So to like go from school to school and try to implement this program to try and fix the root problem, I think is, it's an awesome thing what you're doing.
Is everyone that you've come across and talked to about this, like, are people mostly receptive to this, or
yes.
have you received like judgment or someone who just is like, this is crazy?
Because we all want to stop this from happening, right? And we are mentally fatigued as a society from this still going on.
Yeah, there's a desperation at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And all of them have been highly receptive. They're like, oh my God, why has nobody thought about this? Why don't we just try implementing this? So everyone has been highly, highly receptive on this because it just makes logical sense,
Yeah, no, yeah. And we appreciate it. It's really cool to hear. And, like we've said, this is a topic that isn't going anywhere, unfortunately.
Right.
And this is one of the more productive like just to even have this conversation, to hear your thoughts and what you're trying to implement and do, just to throw something like a new perspective of a potential solution into the mix is interesting and healthy, I think, for people to, like you said, we're just, now we're conditioned. Now it's like, oh, this is so sad. Like, can something shift this? But like nothing's going to change if no one does anything or try something new. And, even if it's ideas that sound crazy at first, like it's going to take someone doing something. So it's really cool and interesting to hear.
Yeah. And I want this to be not the end all be all. I kind of want what I have to present as a solution as a kind of a foundation. If we can all sit at like a round table of just the best minds to sit together and add to it, add whatever you want to it. Cause I know there are several schools that are implementing mindfulness and meditation practices instead of detention. Right?
Interesting.
They're doing meditation. And sure enough, the students that do the meditation, it's a 50% reduction in violence and bullying, So it's going back to the roots of mindfulness and really understanding our actions. So there are pieces of this that are currently working. So it's just taking these ideas and scaling them,
Yeah, no, it's cool. And it's true. It's like you think of the school system and how outdated so many things are, how the sameness of the system and structure of a school for decades and decades and decades and decades. But now think of what kids are living through and technology and social media and comparison to other, like, so sure, why wouldn't there be more progress in sort of the system, or something as simple as detention, like taking a look at that. And it's like, all right, well, sure, this is the same system of like someone did something bad, just throw them in a room with the teacher and have them like write on a chalkboard. Like, can we really progress this, to be more productive? It's really, really interesting all around. And we appreciate, the work you're doing and
thank you.
Like sharing all of this for listeners.
Absolutely. No, I'm wanting to start a revolution. Our country is overdue for one. So this is the time is now, and I'm trying to just start a grassroots movement to really end this epidemic and pandemic, actually, once and for all, because I'm tired. I'm tired of the kids dying. I'm tired of them killing each other. I'm tired of killing themselves. I'm tired of parents, students, and teachers fearing every single day going to school. There's an alarming statistic that I cannot get out of my head. On a daily basis, 4,000 boys fantasize about shooting up their school in the United States alone.
Jesus.
As a parent, that's terrifying to hear. And I often find myself wishing I can just like freeze the age of my children now. And you dread like public, like the school at, whatever age, middle school, high school, where it's out of your control. It's terrifying. And no one can argue with what you just said, that everyone wants us to stop.
That's the reality, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can change this. And I want there is hope. There really is hope to change this. And I'm doing this kind of as a testing ground, and it's working. So now I just want to share the message and just scale this nationwide.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on our platform and sharing this and, bringing more awareness to this, because it's
Yeah.
obviously, like I said before, a very big issue in our country. So, yeah, thanks again for taking the time and talking to us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, no, of course. Good luck with everything.
Yep.
Have a good one.
You too.
I hope there's change. I don't know what
Yeah,
to say.
no.
It's just like,
It is one of those things that like it happens so much in our country. Or it's like you don't even hear about it. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure that if I went online and I looked at the statistics about how many school shootings there's been so far this year, I'd be like, what?
You'd be shocked by the number. I'm
yeah,
sure.
like how is there that many? And they just doesn't get national coverage anymore. And it's terrifying. Like you said, you have children. I'm going to eventually have children one day. And like, I don't want to have to think about that. And I never thought about that when I was going to school when I was younger. But now I would be terrified to be like, is today the day? Like, what's going on here? It's very scary and obviously like a huge issue. And I do agree that, there's these very old school ways of dealing with certain problems, and it just doesn't go anywhere. Like, obviously there is something going on with the children, and there needs to be a radical change, and there has to be just a different approach. And maybe it's time to get experimental and try different things in order to try and fix the issue, because nothing has worked so far.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that, right? Like, I know it seems so daunting, and it's like the message at the end is like, we just need to treat ourselves better. That's like saying like, I just want world peace. Like, all right, is that ever going to happen? But then to take actionable approaches or experiment on a small scale and see what we could do. And I guess it stems from the school and like school culture. And like he said, you're not taught to regulate your emotions at a young age. Like, there's no, I guess, real resources for that. Like, unless that's something your parents are actively trying to teach you or get you help for. And it's so alarming and it's so scary. Like, and the suicide rate too, like he's talking about. Like, I don't know the statistics, but bullying and these stories you hear, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to refute that is an enormous issue causing both school shootings, suicide, and just the increase in all these numbers. It's very scary.
Yeah. So,
But
I mean,
very, interesting, like to his personal story, like coming from essentially getting pushed to the edge and planning this out in his own head and kind of understanding what drove him to even get to that point. And crazy that he kind of came back to this in his life and now wants to kind of dedicate everything to trying to solve this. And respect for like, not just talking about it, but like, all right, here's like the actual like actionable approaches. And it doesn't have to just come from me. Maybe this is a starting point and we could try and we could iterate. And,
like putting it into motion is huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hope that he's able to, anything to mitigate this problem would be great.
Yeah.
Obviously. But for anyone else out there that would like to be a guest on our show, hit us up. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram @OPL Podcast. We got new episodes every 2 weeks. So we'll see you next time.